you ate certain things at the time that it was available, and therefore you ate it at its best possible time to eat.
Exactly. That is, I believe, is the ideal discussions in the Indian family right now, because what we see in markets like fruits and vegetables are available throughout the year.
How food should look, how ingredients should look, and how long they should stay on the shelf, and how well they fit onto a shelf.
Antoine Lewis, sir, it is a great pleasure sitting across to you, sharing the couch, and it is tremendously fortunate that you've given us your time, and we are here to record something phenomenal from your life. And I'm so nervous also at the same time, because your life has been so much into this industry of food and beverage, hospitality, and we gather lots of information. So in this regards, with full your aura and your forte is something very different from all the people, those who have been on the show. So I would like you to just for our audience to give a gist about that, what your life has been into this industry.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. And trust me, my bark is worse than my bite. So, I've been now 25 years in food. I think if you look at it earlier, if you look at my background in the food industry, it'll be about 30 years, because I actually did my hotel management in about 93.
So you're a hotelier itself, right? You started.
I'm not a hotelier, so I did 1 year of the hotel management course, and I realized two things. First, I wasn't learning anything in that course, so I left after the first year. And secondly, I did my industrial training in that 1 year, and after that experience, I realized I am not so stupid to join the industry. Oh, I worked in the main kitchen at one of the five-star hotels in Colaba for 1 month. And I did a break shift, that's a 16-hour break shift, that's 8 hours plus 8 hours a gap in between. And at the end of the 1 month, I got 123 rupees.
Oh.
So I said, no, this is not for me. I love food. I'm very interested in food. I'm very interested in hospitality, in restaurants, in all parts of it. But I realized that I am not a person to be part of the hospitality industry. And since then, I have taken up to food writing, to writing about history, doing restaurant reviews, about culture, about understanding food pathways, about what food means to people, what food means to societies, the language of food, the politics of food. All of those things have been things that have fascinated me and things that I have been writing about.
Okay. So that is a very, eye-opener for me, that I'll take that conversation to where you started as a hotel management student, did your course for 1 year, then you went to a reputed five-star hotel, did your training, but then at the end of the day, you decide that this is not for you. And I suppose I'm able to ask that question, sir, that why was it that you understood that this course is not getting you learned anything?
So I've been passionate about food, I think, since I was in school. Okay. And I think from my 8th standard onwards. And I actually started cooking at home once I was in college. So by the time I actually went to do the hospitality course, I found that a lot of the things that they were teaching me was stuff that I had already read up on, and things that I was already reading or I had already learned. And I was one of those people who actually spent a lot of time in the library, and I'd read almost every book in the institute. And I realized that what was being taught to me was absolutely of no use. And when I went into the industry, when I did my training, I found very little of it was actually coming to use on ground. And what I have found in many years since is that for a lot of the industry students as well, that the training is great. I mean, it's great in terms of being a part of the institute, but your actual learning is the minute you step into the kitchen, or you step into the restaurant, or you step into the front office, whatever it is, or housekeeping. It actually happens on the job.
Okay. So after when you decided that the course is not for you, you stepped out of the industry actively, like in an active sense. Which path did you take after that?
Oh, I took up several paths after that. I had a series of 1 year careers.
Please, something if you can elaborate about.
Yeah. So initially, I decided that I want to work with NGOs and with the environment movement. So
At that young age, you decided that you'll work for NGOs.
yeah.
Okay.
So for 1 year, I was doing that. I worked with different kinds of group. At that time, I think Rajaji National Park in UP was being notified, and so I worked with a lot of different farmers, tribals, forest groups, environment groups, trying to understand what the implications would be for that. I worked with someone who was doing research on alternative building materials, so looking at waste products from chemical factories to use in bricks. I spent 1 year studying history, so that I could do the JNU entrance exam. Then in between, my father passed away, and he was working abroad. So 1 year went in kind of sorting out his affairs and getting that. So my mom and I had to keep traveling up and down, so I couldn't do that. Then 1 year I spent in the television industry.
That's great.
I worked on a couple of talk shows. That was the start of the television boom.
How did that start? The television? Did somebody approach you, or you went to them?
No, so a college, someone I knew from college was working in one of the production companies, and they were looking for research people with no background. And I was working on a talk show called Bindas Bowl.
Yeah.
And
In which year?
This would have been about 96, maybe 95, 96.
Okay, I was just born at that time.
Okay. So this was on Sony. And then then I left because it was like going nowhere. And then they called me back because they knew I was interested in food. And so they said, we want to work on some pilots for some food shows. So will you help us design that? And I did that. And so that's when I met Kunal. And Kunal was the host for the pilot of those shows. After that, I actually got back into food production because I ran a Chinese home delivery service for 1 year.
So that was your business venture? Actually.
Yeah, that was my business venture.
Set up here in Mumbai itself?
In Bombay, in Colaba. I took up a space that was a kitchen. So it was quite interesting. And now we take delivery for granted. But this was 97, 98 maybe. This was still landlines. Delivery was almost non-existent in South Bombay. I can count the number of restaurants that did delivery on one hand. We were the first Chinese delivery place in South Bombay. There was another one that opened in Tardio a little later, much bigger. And we delivered on cycles, and it was on a landline. You called up.
So you had a team there?
I had a team there. And that is when I realized I have absolutely no business sense. And that
you had a loss? You haven't got a loss?
I was so bad, I don't even know whether I got a loss or not. I know I wasn't making money. I was kind of breaking even. I don't think I made a big loss, but I knew that I was at a point where I had to invest a lot to open a bigger place, and then I would actually make big money, or I could shut it down. So I decided to shut it down. And that's when I was looking out for work, and someone offered me the job of a food editor. I didn't even go looking for it.
So 98 people approached you or that edited job. So I want to understand what made the connection with the food so deep that the first job professionally after being, you said that you were not able to run your business. So what did people see in you with the food element that they thought that you can be an editor with them?
It's a very, very good question to ask, because I did not expect to be asked to take over the position. Once I shut down my kitchen, I decided to freelance and do some writing work. And went to a publication called Sunday Observer.
Hmm.
And I was pitching stories, and I met the person who was the cuisine editor for the cuisine page in Sunday Observer, and we had a chat, and then she called me back again. And she said, before I kind of commission, I wanted to meet the editor of the publication. So I said, okay, fine, no problem. And then I went to meet the editor, and she introduced me, and she said, like, listen, I'm leaving. I haven't been able to find anybody to replace me. And I think this guy has got exactly what it takes to replace me. And that's how I got a job I wasn't looking for, which I was not quite trained for, but in a way I was, because I have done my BA in literature. So I have been doing I did do a lot of writing in college. And of course I knew food as well.
How did you knew food? Like, how did you know food that time? Because again, my question is like, what kept you connected with the food so deeply that you know the food? Because in today's day and age, I don't think that people have an understanding of what does food means in a literal sense, that apart from something which is controlling our appetite or fulfilling that, apart from that, I don't think that general audience have an idea that what food does or what the food understanding is, and what does it takes to write even 20 lines or 30 lines about a food. And you did that. So where did you get that confidence from that you can take over the job?
So I think for me is I had been doing a lot of reading on food, and I continually kept reading, and I keep reading now also. I still don't consider myself to be any kind of an expert on food.
But then Bookshare, possesses that I'm in a library.
Yeah, but as you pointed out, the subject is so vast, it's so incredibly huge that the more I know about food, the more I realize how little I know about food. So it's a continuous process. You've got to keep reading, you've got to keep educating yourself, and you've also got to keep honing your skills as a writer. And at that point, when I took up the job, I knew that I had seen the quality of the communication, or the quality of the articles that were being put out on food, and the depth of the knowledge. And I felt on both counts at that point that I knew enough. One is I had training in the industry, one I had worked in hospitality, one I had run my own restaurant as well. Plus I had some amount of a background in writing. So I felt confident enough to say that when I review a restaurant, I'm not just going there as a diner. I also have the perspective of a restaurateur and of a chef.
Okay. I think that makes a great combination, because all three combined together have different minds put into the one review. And I believe that it is very helpful for everyone to understand that whether it is for them or not.
Yeah.
So coming to that part, have you ever entitled yourself as a chef?
No, I've never ever called myself a chef. And actually, even on my blog, I've called it the Curly Head Cook.
Curly Head Cook.
And I've taken the title Cook. And though a lot of people say chef, I refuse to accept that, because I think chef is a title that comes from a certain experience. There's also chef is a French word, and there is a certain history to why it was called chef and why Escoffier created the brigade. He created the brigade based on the army, the system of the army, with like different sections to it. Chef is not a culinary term in the French language. Chef means chief or boss, actually. So if you meet a chef, a French person, they will call their boss in whatever industry chef. And we have now come to be associated with
Culinary.
food and culinary hospital. So everyone calls themselves chef. And so if you say home chef, it doesn't mean anything. It's like a home manager. So
Literal translation.
yeah. So home boss, actually, which means nothing, actually. It's just that we like the word chef because, and again, if you look at the history of the word chef in India per se, until say the 2000 perhaps, a chef was a glorified bawarchi. people didn't want their children to become chefs. They didn't want them to become join the industry. There's you're a cook. Why do you want to become a cook? You know, it is with the opening up of the industry, opening up of the economy, and the growth of the service sector that chefs suddenly started becoming respectable. Satish Arora released his autobiography earlier this year, and he was talking about in the 60s how when they opened a restaurant in the Taj, it was impossible for him to find cooks at the Taj. Okay, they had to get people from, I think, Delhi or something, because there were no hotel management students at that point to kind of people his restaurant. When I spoke Rahul Akerkar, when he opened Under the Over, which was sometime in the 90s, he said that no hospitality management students wanted to join the standalone restaurant. Everyone wanted to go into the hotel industry. And so it's like the respectability of the chef didn't exist till about 15, 20 years ago.
Can you specify any year which you feel like the industry, the food and beverage industry in total, including restaurant, QSRs, hotels, standalones, have taken up a spike in this context only?
A spike in what sense?
A spike in people aspiring to join this industry as a chef.
So I think post the advent of television, and I think the number of cooking shows that we saw on TV. But actually, if I had to put a particular moment, I would look at MasterChef Australia. I think MasterChef Australia came at a key point where a lot of people realized how respectable it was to become a chef, whether it was at home or in the industry. I think that sense of this is a profession we would like our children to go into, that there is something over here that is important. I think that was a key turning point. I think also, if I had to go back a little bit more, is the growth of the standalone industry. Standalone restaurants in India, and I think that is about 99 with Indigo and Olive opening up in Bombay, where for the first time you saw a chef was the business owner. And I think that was a very key shift in the mind of people, because earlier cooks were employees of a Seth. Okay? And they were all working class people. Suddenly you found that middle and upper class people were now chefs working in the kitchen, but also ran a business.
Exactly. That is what I wanted to know and wanted to understand, that who was the pioneers in this industry. Because in today's world, if I cut that period down to 2024 or precisely to 2022, post-COVID, when we are sitting here, people have a thing in their mind that if they know how to cook a dish, or if to an extent they know how to prepare a menu, they can run a business. So from you, I wish to understand, please enlighten us with your experience. What is the success rate of a chef operated on and owned restaurant?
So one of the key things really for anyone to understand is, if you love cooking and you're very passionate about cooking, don't start a restaurant. Don't get into the food business. Because the cooking part of it is just one very small component of it. Running a restaurant is a business, and you have to understand marketing, you have to understand cost planning, you have to understand how to staffing, HR, interiors. You have to understand how to deal with vendors, procurements. You have to understand licensing rules, and licensing is a continuous
in India, even today, it stands as a challenge.
Yeah, so the cooking part of it, that is really just one very, very small component of it, and that is something that I realized when I was running my business. When I was running my business, that I loved cooking. I loved Chinese food. I loved Indian Chinese. But that didn't really matter. I needed to kind of budget to make sure that I had enough money to buy supplies, that I had to budget to kind of ensure that I could pay vendors on time, that I had to take care of myself. HR is a huge part of it. You're working in a high pressure environment where uh, kitchen staff have to kind of produce food in a difficult situation very, very quickly. Service staff have to deal with customers who are very demanding. There's always friction between kitchen and service staff, between the bar and the service staff. You've got to keep your whole team together as well. So
So cooking was not just a part for a
it's
business.
not just a part of a business. I mean, you cannot say that I'm a great chef and therefore I'm going to run a business. You have to understand every part of the business before you say that, okay, I'm going to, otherwise you will not succeed. I mean, I will guarantee you that.
Okay, so continue from 1998 as a food editor. You must have experienced several types of foods, cuisines, as we say, that were flourishing at that time, entering into India, because I don't think hotel industry or restaurant industry was vast enough that time that is right now. So what was that first, dish which came into your life? Like you were hesitant about any dish to try or something when you went for a food review?
I've never been hesitant to try anything.
Like something like, came as a method of cooking, the way it was being served, what that ingredient was, or something like you were instantly, what would be like if I eat that?
So I'm actually quite the opposite. I am quite adventurous, and I am like, my philosophy with food has been that I will try anything once.
Okay. Maybe anything.
Huh?
Maybe anything.
Maybe anything.
From any part of the world.
Any part of the world, I have tried everything. I mean, whatever I have come across, I have
any
tried
experience that you encounter which was not as per your expectation?
Nothing that I can think of offhand, but I think some of the weird dishes I have tried that I've really liked was snails, for instance. I tried snails when I was quite young, I think maybe in the second year of my reviewing.
At which restaurant?
This was at there's a restaurant at the Oberoi, which is now shut down. It's been replaced by Vetro. I forget the name of the restaurant, but that's where there was a French food festival, I think, that was going on at that time. It was one of the first stories that I actually covered for Sunday Observer. And that's when I write those things. So we done snails and butter and parsley with the actual snail and that. I was like terrified of the snail flying out of the snail tongues. I remember that, and like there are lots of films where you see it happening. So that was my great fear at that point. But I've had snake wine with a snake in it, and all I think meats from South Africa, wild meats. I've tried everything. I've had grasshoppers in Bangkok. I've had maggots in Australia. I've had ants in Australia. I've eaten everything.
So did your food journey completed every aspect of the world, or there are few places left for you?
I haven't touched. I've touched very little of Africa, for instance. I've touched very little of South America. I've only done a couple of countries in South Asia. Actually, I do have an incident where I did have a dish which was, and I've always talked about how it has been my nastiest food experience.
Please.
So this was in Korea. I had gone on it was a food tour with the journalists from Asia, and you've heard of the stingray fish. It's this flatfish. It killed that famous Australian guy. It has a long stinger attached to it. It's a completely flat fish. And this was at a restaurant that specialized in royal Korean food, the food that would be served to the royalty in Korea. And the speciality and one of the key things of this place was that they would feed you the food. Not the whole thing, that they would give you the first bite, they would feed you. Now, the thing with stingray is that if it is not cured properly, it has a very high ammonia content. Okay. And when they pushed that piece of stingray into my mouth, it felt like I was eating a piece of urine that had been solidified. You know, the smell that you get in a public loo, in a railway public loo, when that was the taste in my mouth.
And the one who went along with you?
No. So it was a group of us. And,
Okay.
But yeah.
How did
And I couldn't spit it out. I was in a group. It was in a fancy place. I had to eat the damn thing.
Wow. So which year was this?
This must have been about 2005, 2006.
Wow. So all these visits to other places, may it be domestic or international, were they sponsored by the organizations that you work with? Or what
Some were.
Somewhat.
As a journalist, you get invited to various places, either to hotels directly or via the tour organizer, the representatives of the country, to do different kinds of things. So yeah, some of them have been on personal travel as well. I mean, all my personal travel is based around food. So on one of my personal trips to Bangkok was when I met Gagan Anand. And he had just, I think, was the top 50 or the top 10. It's the first time that he had come onto the top 50 list. And so we made a booking. I didn't know him, he didn't know me. We just made a booking as a thing. And so he noticed that I was taking pictures of every dish and all that. So he came out, he introduced himself, and we started talking and like all of that. And then he kind of figured out who I was and that I was a journalist and all of that. And then he started sending out food and and just through that conversation, and after that, we've become great friends since. And twice I've gone back to Bangkok after that, and I've always met Gagan. And I think I'm one of the few people I have eaten Gagan's food several times, and it's always been at his invitation.
So I wanted to understand, sir, with your experience so vast when you have traveled across the world, talking about India, where India needs to improve and what we need to give out to the world in terms of food. Like, has it achieved what India had to achieve with its ideology and philosophy of food, and what we had in our that was prevailing earlier? Now we are showcasing that with the medium of food pop-ups and many TV shows. Now, comparatively, there were no existence of these TV shows earlier. So please enlighten us that where do we need to improve and what world needs to learn from us?
Why do we need to improve?
Improve in the sense, do we need to improvement in the sense of adapting new culture or to carry forward what we have been taught?
So, I mean, I don't agree with the word improve.
Okay.
I think I have a problem with with that.
Any particular reason behind that?
I don't think food improves or deteriorates. I think food is a part of our material culture, and it is a reflection of what we as a people, as human beings living in a particular environment, living in a particular political and social economy, require from our food. So food at a very basic fulfills a nutritional need. Okay. Apart from that, and when you start later, it fulfills cultural and social needs. the nutritional needs are pretty much stay more or less. Though, of course, over time, what we see, if you look at the history of ingredients, for instance, of actual things, that they have changed dramatically. They have been adapted to commerce, industrialization, and to the market. So one of the things that we have lost, actually, and where I think we have deteriorated, and not just in India, but globally, is that we have lost diversity. We the amount of food, the different kinds, the varieties of food we have lost because we have only chosen foods that work for certain markets and for certain processes. And in America, you see it far more because they follow a supermarket model where there are certain ideas of how food should look, how ingredients should look, and how long they should stay on the shelf and how well they fit onto a shelf. A carrot can be any other color than orange is not something that we understand and acceptable than others because they're easier to market and they're easy to grow on scale. And this is true for all things, but you look at potatoes, you look at poultry, you look at meats, whatever it is. Certain breeds only exist and certain breeds dominate. So in that sense, there has actually been a deterioration. And we see that in India as well. India, for instance, we're now seeing a resurgence of millets, for instance. But millets have been like a very common and popular food right through. The number of rices that we eat, the number of varieties of rice has gone down drastically. I think initially India had maybe 1,000 varieties of rice. I think currently we are commercially producing maybe 20 or 30 varieties, maybe 50, I don't know. But that number has gone down drastically. So if I had to say there are improvements required, I think it is improvements in being accepting of different varieties that don't kind of necessarily measure up to our expectations of what things should look like and how they should be. I don't think we need improvements in the way we prepare our food or whatever thing.
We need to open up to the culture and to the varieties of food.
Yeah,
because we have set limitations around ourselves.
We have set limitations. One of the other problems I feel is that we have given up eating in a natural way. So earlier all food would be seasonal. You ate certain things at the time that it was available, and therefore you ate it at its best possible time to eat.
Exactly. That is, I believe, is the ideal discussions in the Indian family right now, because what we see in markets like fruits and vegetables are available throughout the year. That is what I believe is the common.
So that's the problem. And one thing that I have for myself, and I have decided, I will never eat anything out of season, at least with fruits, because I know
how it is.
With vegetables, it's a little more difficult because I haven't followed what are the patterns, but there was a season for tomatoes. There was a season for onions. Everything is not a perennial. And when it was not available, you found different ways of preserving it. That is why you have all your achars and all of that, and your dried fish and whatever is a way of preservation, so that in periods that the food was not available fresh,
you can
use it in a different way.
Exactly. So salt and sugar and oils that we use in Indian households, they acted as a preservative so that we can consume in off season as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. So tell me, sir, during these years of food critics and food review, and now these awards which are coming up and which have been there already, you have been the jury member as well. What is the responsibility that you have had while judging a restaurant or while judging a dish or a chef or something else that you feel upon that you had a responsibility while you speak, while you write, or while you judge?
So I think when I was younger, I think I was a lot more harsh. I was more focused on the quality of the product or the quality of the service of and of the experience. Um, I never looked at the fact that there were people behind it.
Okay, so you only looked at a dish that's kept on table.
Yeah, I only looked, and so because I come from a literary background, I mean, I would say that I looked at the text. I looked at the dish, it was a text, and what did the text tell me, how good or bad it was? I never looked at the fact that there were people creating that there were people like me who had good days, bad days, who had emotions, for whom that criticism meant something. And I think over the years, I've started to realize that I haven't necessarily toned down my criticism. I am still very sharp in what I say. A lot of people don't like me because I'm very honest in what I say. I don't kind of hold back. But I am more mindful of the fact that, okay, things may not always work out best, that the day that I go may not have been the best day for that chef or for that team or whatever. It may change. And so I leave a little wiggle room in what I am saying in terms of saying, I may say that at this time it wasn't the best. Maybe there is scope for improvement. I kind of suggest to people that, okay, you can do things better, that maybe you give them a chance and let them. So I let the team know that these are the problems that they are having and where they need to improve, rather than saying like, this is bad and you're doing it wrong. You know, so I've kind of changed my tack in that. I think it's the same way with awards as well, that I try to understand how does a place compare with a whole bunch of other places doing the same kind of thing, doing the same work. Are they doing it much better? Are they adapting to customer feedback more quickly? Have they improved things, or are they like willing to be?
So do you go and check, like if, for instance, you have been to a restaurant and gave a feedback to them, and after a certain period of time, you went again and just a random thought came in your mind that what feedback you gave?
In some places, I have found that, you know, people are listening. And what I've also realized a lot of the times that the chefs come to me and this thing, and because unlike a customer, when you ask someone like, you know, did you like something? I'll say, yes, it's good. Yes. I will tell the person in detail why it is good and why it is working. I will talk about the textures. I will talk about the ingredients. I'm talking about the quality, about the temperature, the kind of the combination, how things are working. So the feedback I give is very detailed. And sometimes it works well for me in terms of a chef says, okay, great, thank you very much. Sometimes it works badly for me because I said, oh, this is what you're giving me. Please try more dishes. And like sometimes I've ended up with having like a meal where there are 20 dishes that I've been served because the chef wants me to give more and more feedback on things. So I have to understand what is kind of going well and what is like, you know, going wrong. So yeah, there have been places, and I've also realized that in the first few minutes of that conversation with the chef, I realized, okay, this person is receptive or not. And based on their receptiveness, and then I kind of give them the feedback. If I find that, okay, this person is not interested, then I say, yeah, it's fine, it's like good, or it's like, okay, you need to do this. But otherwise, I don't bother.
Hardly any place left for you to be in the restaurant. So are the people there working afraid of you stepping into the restaurant, or it's normal?
In some places, they are aware of who I am.
Standard that you are looking for.
Yeah, they know that I am someone who knows food. And in many places also, there are places where chefs come to try to, who don't know. They start kind of explaining it to me, and then I start correcting and say, this is actually what it is. And then they realize who they're kind of dealing, and then the whole thing changes. The relationship changes. It can get better or worse when they say, okay, like, you do know your stuff, so like, okay, let's have a different kind of a conversation.
Who have been your inspiration while all these years in writing, critics? Like, you might have had some kind of anecdotes wherein you met some people of your genre, those who were at really high pace and high standards, positions, those who have already inscribed everything. So who were all the people that you met?
And that's anyone who's been really
into this.
As much for the time that I was there weren't very many people in the writing space. So I've never really looked a lot at food writers per se as inspiration. I've generally looked at writers and writing, at being a better writer. So I've looked at various people and said, this is something I should pick up from here. This is that they have used this turn of phrase better. I have actually, if there is a body of people, I would say it's French social historians and French food writers and French, who have, I think, been my inspiration. Said, okay, they write really fantastically. And these are people, if I want to write a book, this is the quality of the writing that I should aspire for. But in general, with my articles and everything, it's really writers that I've kind of been looking at across the world, whether it's a Rishabh or Amitav Ghosh or anybody else. I said, like, my writing should be somewhere within that league.
Who are other chefs in the country to whom you look up to in terms of having their recipes or their detailing of food or something of that genre?
So there are various chefs I look at for different kinds of things.
For instance?
So if I want to talk about food history, and I want to talk about, especially with South India, I think Chef Praveen Anand is one of my favorite people. There is no other chef I have met who understands food history as well as he does. When it comes to actually cooking and to culinary, and actually generally about food, about restaurants, about understanding customers and looking at your restaurant, I think there is no better person than Manu Chandra. He's one of the most literate and one of the most cerebral Indian chefs I have ever come across. If it is someone I'm looking for someone who's really passionate about what they're doing, who brings a lot of emotion, who brings a lot of sensitivity to what they're doing, I think that is Ranveer Brar. Who else is there that I really like? One of the great chefs, actually, and who was a great raconteur. People talk about about his food, but who was actually the most fabulous storyteller and who would keep you hooked, really, was Imtiaz Qureshi.
Yeah.
The man would spin a tale like nobody else cook. And I think I did a cover story for Brunch on the Qureshi family. And the stories that he would tell, I've never met a chef like that.
So you recall any moment with him?
I think there's a story that he loves telling and which he's told in various places.
Please tell me, because I don't have that opportunity, because unfortunately passed away.
Yeah, and I've written about it in my story, and I think others also.
Please.
Was when this was in Lucknow, this was post-independent years, this was much before he had joined the ITC, when he had just become famous, was becoming famous in Lucknow. And I think the governor of UP had invited Nehru and I think Rajendra Prasad for a meal.
Okay.
And he had asked Imtiaz to cook, because Imtiaz was the rising by that time. And Nehru had accepted the invitation, but he had said, I will only eat vegetarian because Rajendra Prasad, whoever it was, is a vegetarian. So I will not eat any meat. So whatever you cook has to be veg. So Imtiaz said, okay, fine, no problem. And he created this elaborate menu with everything, and food was sent out to Nehru. And Nehru took one bite and he was absolutely furious. He said, "What is this? I had said very, very specifically that I will not eat any meat at this meal, and here you are serving me meat. Call the chef. I want to have a word with him." So Imtiaz was called, and Nehru fired him. What the hell is this? What are you doing? So he said, "Sir, will you let me speak?" So Nehru said, "Yes, of course, please." So I said, "Everything that I have cooked for you is of vegetables. What you are eating is not meat. It is, I think, lauki or something, which I have treated in such a way that it feels like fish to you." And Nehru was like completely flabbergasted, and he apologized, and of course, he ate the meal and had a wonderful meal and congratulated Imtiaz at the end of it. So, yeah.
That's great, sir. So, if I take this in your life, it's been like a whole day with you now. What I've observed is your calmness, your politeness. Over the years, I've not been into this industry for the time that you have been, but the guys are really very, very energetic, and the voices, very calm, you're very, going with the flow. What has added up to this aura of yours? Personal experiences, past experiences, some of that. You ever had friends in the industry?
I have lots of friends in the industry.
And do you meet often them, or it's a very
My
casual?
batchmates, not very much, but yeah, people generally, like Ajay Chopra, whom you're also going to interview, is a great friend. He's again I was one of the first people to write about him when he was I know him since he was a junior sous at JW Magic. So a lot of these people who have now gone on to become executive chefs and all are all people I have been writing about when nobody knew them and they were nothing. Paul Kinney, who's the culinary director of St. Regis, he was with me at the Taj main kitchen.
Wow.
He was like, I think he had his first year or second year at the Taj. And I think he was at, I don't know which kitchen he was. I think he was at Zodiac Grill at that time, or maybe before that. So I know all of these people from a very young age. My calmness is just, I don't know, I just don't get agitated. I think the politeness is something that I have I've been very careful about. And I think it is because I deal with service staff so much. And I realized one of the terrible things about Indian customers and Indian diners is that they're very rude with service staff, and I absolutely hate that. Service staff are doing a job, whichever part of the service industry, whether you go into a supermarket or you go into modern retail, and it's just someone helping you choose your clothes or your shoes or whatever it is. They're all human beings. They're all trying to do a job to the best of their ability. It costs you nothing to be polite to them, with them. So I do that to the fullest extent that I can. Even when I'm angry and when things go wrong, I am angry in a firm but a very polite way.
Whom do you think are the people, those who are doing great in journalism of food and beverage?
I think Vikram Doctor used to write incredible columns about food and about ingredients. And I'm not sure if he still does that, but I know he does it on Instagram now. Mariam Reshi is a fabulous food critic as well in Delhi, covers things very, very well. I think Samar Harlankar has done a very nice series. I think he still does it on a very personal approach to food and cooking. I think one of the most intelligent writers on food, and at least from the younger generation, has been Anuthi Vishal.
Anuthi Vishal. Yeah.
I think the way that she can construct arguments when she's not doing her trend stories, but when she's doing actual serious pieces, has been fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
What are your favorite places in Bombay and apart from Bombay in India to go out to have a meal, a particular meal that you like the most, including hotels?
So, one of my favorite places in Bombay, and it's a very odd place for me because I'm a hardcore meat eater, and I rarely ever have a meal without meat, is a place called Thakkar Bhojnalaya, which does Gujarati thali. And it is one place that I'm willing to take people to any time of the day. Anyone who comes to Bombay, I say, like, I will take you there. I have never had fresher food and more tasty food than at Thakkar Bhojnalaya. This is a la minute cooking taken to its highest point. You will not find that in any Indian restaurant in anywhere in the country.
Okay.
Apart from that, when it comes to Indian food at a 5-star level, I think I've always loved kebabs and curries. I think Mohammad Sharif is an extremely talented chef who does fabulous food. I've also liked Avartan, which is in Chennai and which is now opened in Bombay. ITC has not again been able to do modern Indian food very well. They've tried it, but with Avartan they have really cracked the code. So that is incredible. What about other places? I mean, I love going to Leopold and in Colaba, which has just got a great vibe. It's a very kind of nice. It's got the touristy place, but it's got very good food at a very reasonable price. So that's a place I've enjoyed quite a lot. What else is there? Oberoi has now gotten into standalone restaurants, and there's Amadeo by Oberoi, which has opened in BKC at the NMACC, and I thought their approach to multi-cuisine, to have a restaurant that does Indian, Japanese, Chinese, Italian, the food is exceptional and fabulous cocktails. There's a small backyard bar in Arpora in Goa that someone recommended I go to, and I've absolutely fallen in love with it. And I have decided that every time I go to Goa, I will go there. It's called Kaji's Bar.
Okay.
It's run by a lady and her son, and the daughter helps out as well. It is the sweetest backyard. It's in the backyard of the house, and it is the most lovely place ever that I have been to.
Great. So, what piece of advice would you give to people, those who wish to write about food, those who wish to be connected with the food, in terms of journalism, in terms of social media, wherein they express their reviews, their sentiments about food? Like, what kind of approach should they have?
I don't know if I have advice anymore because I don't think the younger generation listens to advice.
AI, they listen to AI. They make AI work for them.
Yeah, and actually that's very true because I did try doing my reviews with AI.
What was the result?
It was, the text that came up was exactly the same text that I have seen so many influencers use in their reviews.
Okay.
It was like, I was looking at what AI had got, and it was like whatever people were saying, influencers were saying on Reels, it was exactly the same tonality. And I was like, wow, so this is where it's being written. But so when it comes to journalism, I don't know if there are actually a lot of new journalists, younger generation, who are coming up because everything has gone onto social media and onto into Reels and into influencers. And my problem with that is that Everyone does it beautifully visually, and it's all very well packaged. People don't bother to understand the food. They don't bother to learn what the food is, how it should be described, how it should be talked about. All they want to talk about is how delicious it is, how this is some kind of hidden gem that they have discovered. A hidden gem, I have realized on Instagram, is anything that is more than 30 years old. Okay, because most influencers are 20 to 22 to 25, so it existed
Do you
before they
think
were
they
born.
do justice to what food and sentiments of the person connected to that food is?
I don't think it does justice to them, but I don't think their audience cares whether they do justice.
Okay.
Okay. I think they do a fantastic job with discovery, which is what people want. And I may be wrong about this, but I have a fear that the way food is being communicated right now, that there is a dumbing down that is happening, which will be really bad for consumers and for the industry as well.
Okay.
Because food is not just food, the whole entire experience is only being talked about in positive and glowing terms. So there is no feedback loop for the producers of the food or the providers of the service. So people just don't know how good or bad they are.
In your understanding, can you give me a definition of who a food connoisseur is? Or would you be like to addressed as a food connoisseur?
Not really. I mean, I don't think I'm a connoisseur is it's an out of date kind of a term.
What makes you say that, sir?
Because I don't think anyone is looking. I think that a connoisseur came out of a certain political economy where you had a limited amount of food, and therefore you could choose within that. You were extremely knowledgeable within a set range of dishes or set range of cuisines. I think the world of cuisines, accessibility to global and local cuisines is so vast, it is impossible for anyone to be a connoisseur anymore. You can, to a certain extent, say about a very specific, a very niche area. You can be a connoisseur of Bordeaux wines, for instance. Okay. Because it's just that much.
That region.
Yeah. But are you a connoisseur of wines, given that the world of wines is so great, and given that there are so many new world wines made? I'm not sure.
Okay.
You can be knowledgeable about many things, and I'm knowledgeable about many things, but connoisseur for me is, I don't think that is a term that is relevant anymore.
Okay. Just a turning point of this conversation. Apart from, I don't know if it is repeating this in a conversation, in your life specifically, how food and food journalism has made a difference. So
the reason that I write about food is that I'm using food as an entry point to understand society and culture. Okay. Well, I'm doing reviews, which is nice and which is fine, but what I'm also doing through those reviews is understanding how the food culture of a city is changing.
Okay.
How the expectations and the demands, the palette is changing. So what I'm actually doing through food is interrogating society. And that has opened up my mind tremendously to understanding how societies actually function and work, to why are certain ingredients chosen, what are the ways in which food travels, whether it is an actual dish or an ingredient, travels from one place to the other. You look at the social and the political framework within which food operates. You look at caste structure, you look at communities, you look at whose food gets chosen to be represented in restaurants and how it is represented. Okay, what kind of spirits or wines or drinks are becoming popular and why they are being popular. How that is a reflection of a changing society of wealth in India and globally. How when people have money, they eat in certain ways, and how when there is a shortage, they eat it in different ways. What happened, for instance, to food habits during COVID, when things were not accessible, when people didn't have their maids coming in to do all their cleaning, and all of that support staff and all that support system. What happened when restaurants were not being able to do deliveries? Who were the people who got fired first and who were hired first? So all of this has become, I'm able to understand because I use food as a tool to explore all of these realities.
Exactly. Okay, everything is done, and now, okay, one last. I don't get any invites for the restaurants for the. Upar se I'm a vegetarian, okay, but then I have lots of weight more than you, sir. How do you keep yourself so well maintained, putting on something like anything? You look so smart until date, right? So please tell me, what is the secret after having so much of invites from the restaurants, and you said that no meal is without meat of yours. So please tell me, and not only me, but our viewers also want to know that what is the secret of your fitness at such a point of time?
So I wasn't always this fit. There was a point where I was vastly overweight, and I actually lost about 20 kilos. And I did that by going on a diet.
So you went on a diet being a food journalist? How did
Yeah,
that
so
happen?
imagine, I mean, like when people say, I don't know, we can't lose weight and all that, I say, like, listen, I'm a food critic. Every meal, and I weigh myself up, I put on 1 kilo, okay, after a meal. So now, of course, I had to cut down on the number of meals that I ate to do that. But also because I went through intermittent fasting, and then I also run. I run and I exercise
Every day?
Not every day. I used to run, say, 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
And now I don't run during the monsoon. But yeah, it's just about controlling. My dad, I eat only once a day. So
what do you prepare yourself?
I never prepare anything myself because I'm either out so often or food is being sent to me so often. So I don't actually cook very much, though. The most amount of money I have spent in any room in my house is in my kitchen. I have more pans and more knives than I require. I live alone with 1 dog and 2 cats, and I have a 650-liter fridge. Okay, there are families that are much smaller. So I have 6 different types of mustards, 6 different types of things. So when I cook really well, and my meals are very elaborate, but I only cook when there are people coming over. For myself, actually, I make very, very complex sandwiches. And I've realized that if I actually had to price any of the sandwiches that I make for myself, it would not sell for anything less than $1,000.
Wow. Now that calls for a recipe because you have initiated that hook in me. So the next question, not a
but
question,
all of
but
it
a
is with
request.
meat. None of it is without meat. So,
Okay.
yeah. And every recipe of mine, and I have to keep controlling myself from doing it. My first thing that goes in my mind is all my recipes always start with, okay, what can I do with bacon?
So that's your favorite kind of a thing that you put into your meals.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir, for participating. And I believe that along with me, our audience, our viewers also have an insight about what what can be the other things that a person can contribute in a way to the food and beverage industry in total, to sum up in the hospitality industry, and do so well and giving insights to people to think in a new way. And thank you very much, sir, for your time. And I believe and I wish you lots of health and lots of contribution in educating us through any medium of yours, while writing your scripts and anything the way you spoke today. I'm very grateful. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. It was a lovely conversation. I'm glad that you chose to chat with me, and I had a great time.
My pleasure, sir. Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.